Meet our new employee. Hello team, meet Mr. Whiteman. He's joining our economics team. He is creative with non-stop bright ideas. He has 5 years of working experience. He lives in Westville with his wife and 2 kids and is 30 years old. He has a degree in economics. How awesome is that? He is a team player, skillful, flexible and reliable. His hourly wage at our company is 160 Rand. But what would happen if Mr. Whiteman was not white?
Meet our new employee. Hello team, meet Mr. Zulu. He's joining our economics team. He's exactly the same as Mr. Whiteman. Also with a degree in economics, which should be awesome, right? But he only earns 57% of what Mr. Whiteman earns. So why is there a gap in their wages? Because of racial discrimination. Discrimination in the workplace is a serious issue. According to the Human Rights Commission, it is a violation of human rights. It creates an unhealthy working environment for the discriminated group. Also, it discourages the discriminated group from putting effort in the work they do. Finally, it affects the ability of African workers to financially sustain themselves.
According to other researchers, the average earnings of white workers were proven to be 2.4 times higher than that of African workers. The results of the study suggested that test scores, which focus on measuring the cognitive abilities of participants, were essential in providing a possible explanation as to the wage gap between African Americans and white group members.
We used various techniques to calculate how wide the wage gap is between African and white workers. Firstly, we calculated the average earnings for African and white workers. Then, we used a technique called an OLS regression to see if there's a relationship between earnings and race. The final technique we used is called a quantile regression. It looks at how different the gap in earnings are for workers across the wage brackets.
So what have we learned through this ordeal? We learned that racial discrimination still exists and is present in the wage gap. The results explain that the skills gap could be a plausible reason for the gap in earnings between races. However, we find more evidence that the wage gap is due to racial discrimination, that individuals with identical abilities are paid different wages because they belong to different racial groups. When analyzing the relationship between race and earnings, the results showed that on average, white workers earn 169.92% more than African workers. The quintile calculations indicated how wide the wage gap is across the distribution. Once education has been controlled for, we clearly see that the gaps in wages are attributed to discrimination, not a lack of skills. A racial wage gap in favor of white workers persists as we move up the distribution.
After accounting for the differences in skills, the variation between the wage gap of white and African workers were identified to be due to the presence of unobservable characteristics. These include an employee's personality traits, attitude, and belief systems. Thus, a more in-depth analysis of the unobservable characteristics displayed by employees should be conducted for future research purposes.
We understand that there is more to be explored, but if this isn't racial discrimination, what is?